I'm trying to remember the last time I actually did do this, go live when I'm driving. I feel like the last time I did this was like Vermont, and visiting my family, which is exactly what I'm doing today. I am going straight to my grandmother to see her at the nursing home she's in, bringing her favorite. Well, yeah, I think it's her favorite donut. I think her second favorite is a Boston cream donut that Dunkin' Donuts has, but she also likes these maple glazed cider donuts. I think it's like called maple glazed apple cider donuts. My grandmother is obsessed with maple syrup still to this day, even though I want to say the last time that the family was sugaring in the old sugar shack was, I think, hold on, my grandfather died in 2000. Probably around 2005, 2007, somewhere in there, they stopped sugaring. So it's been a while. It's been like close to 20 years since we've done any sugaring in the shack. It's still there, but the thing is definitely crumbling and falling apart because, my grandfather built it back in like 1960s, probably. He built the sugar shed. I know it's not that old when you think about it, but when you build a sugar shack or sugar shed, a lot of people don't go, some do go crazy in how they make their sugar shack. They use simple materials. They don't, they don't go and make it a lot. Two of us could be there and, sleep in shifts because when you're small time, just a little independent sugaring family, you're kind of like, you have to be there a lot because you're trying to get as much much sap as you possibly can. We had this big 100-gallon, I think, or maybe it was more, it might have been 300-gallon vat in the back behind the sugar shed, and we would get sap every morning and fill it. We probably had, for our operation, like 200 or 300 trees that we tapped, and you're making, if you're getting a good spring, good winter, good spring, what ends up happening kind of is you get gallon of sap. So what would happen is we do a run, it would get full, so we'd have to, empty some of it into the pans, boil it down, and then before you know it, it'd be filled up again in the back, the 300-gallon tank. We also had actually, I forgot that. We have 300. We have the next stage, which is a setup where it's like 100 gallons, so it'll pour into, once from the 100-gallon, it would go into the pans, and we'd have 4 or 6 different pans. Your syrup would definitely be towards the front where you can drain it off. We had the drain. I want to say, so kind of a thing about sap and maple trees. We had the dark maples, and due to that, and due to the fact that we get sap, I think it's like has to be, or you have to. I think it was 3 gallons of sap turned into 1 gallon of syrup, but it also depends on the trees. So I believe we were doing like 3 to 1, but I think it can also be 5 to 1. You're end up boiling down 5 gallons of sap just to make a gallon of syrup. It was fun. It was freaking hard work. I mean, I think as early as 6 years old, maybe even a little younger, my grandfather made us grandchildren learn how to do this stuff from an early age. So believe it or not, I was carrying around, at first when we were really young, he wouldn't make us do more than a gallon on each arm. So we'd have the 2-gallon things. We'd lift them up over our shoulder like this, like a pole, and had the 2 at the end attached. And we'd have to walk through the woods to get to his. He had a. It was like basically a riding mower-ish, but you could take off the mowers. He had like a bigger size one, and he would go through the snow with that a little bit. It could handle going through some snow, but it couldn't handle going into the woods like where some of these other trees were. So we'd have to go in with these buckets. By the time I was 12, I was actually taking 5 gallons of sap on each shoulder. The bigger buckets. We had bigger buckets for the adults and the teenagers. So I think I was like maybe 13, going and getting that sap. And I just remember like also taking turns. My grandfather made us take turns. If it was like spring break or something, I'd be at the sugar shed, and I would even stay overnight at the sugar shed. Sometimes with my grandfather, sometimes with some of my aunts, to staying there too. A lot of the cousins did more than my grandfather, because my grandfather started having health problems at the time I was, I don't know, like 12, maybe 12, 10, no, because it was, let's see, okay, he died in 2000. I think I was like, yeah, I would say 10. No, because 8 years. So I was like 12 years old when my grandfather started having more health problems. By the time I was 15, he had a massive heart attack and kind of left him sort of debilitated by his mind. He started having like dementia signs because he ended up having lack of oxygen during the heart attack. The truth be told, when I was 15 years old, and my grandmother would have been 78, 76, she was 71, and he was 73 or something. And the heart attack, the doctors almost did not really want to bring him back. They brought him back, and, you know, he didn't deteriorate fast. Like, sorry, I have a crick in my neck. He didn't deteriorate fast or anything. It took some time. It was progressive. But, you know, within those 5 years, I think within 2 years, he more or less stopped doing the work at the sugar shack. What he would do, he'd hang out with him. And he was forgetful at that point, but he'd still, you know, hang out at the sugar shed while we did all the work. And then I was like around 17, and then the last 2 or 3 years, somewhere in there, like 1997, 98, around the time I graduated from high school, you know, he kind of stopped doing it. He stopped doing any of it and was at home, and we started having problems with him. We had to put an alarm on the door. So it kind of went downhill from there, which was, I'd say, like, it was certainly traumatic for me to see this, because I was 15 when I started seeing this stuff, and it hurt. It hurt a lot, but, you know, we still tried for like I want to say like 5 years, maybe 7 years after Grandpa died. We continued the legacy. We did, and I helped a little bit, but I a lot. Like, I would come up, take time off around the sugaring time, and spend some time there. Fucked up, and we ended up almost burning down the sugar shed. Like part of one of the walls caught fire. Let's just say that. And, you know, that was tragic. And then I think sort of like a few of us ended up stopping, a few more of us ended up stopping doing the sugaring, including me, because I had by that point moved down to Massachusetts. I think by the time they kind of stopped, I would have been close to 29, 30 years old. And that was what, in 2010, around that time when I actually started going to college for my master's. I had already gotten my associates during this time. I was still kind of going up and helping, but then it ended up only being two of my cousins doing it, and sometimes my uncle would help out, but it only ended up being the three of them, and so it just became sort of overwhelming for, you know, for them to do, and so it fell by the wayside, and then I'd say it was completely stopped, and we stopped using the sugar shed in 2010. That was complete. I think they had tried a couple different years, and they reduced. Like I was saying at the beginning, like we did like 200 or 300 trees that we tapped, probably like 300. And I think my cousins, when it was just the two of them, and my uncle wasn't helping as much, towards 2010, I think they had gone down to like 50 or 60 trees. You know, that's still quite a bit. Like, I think they were still making 60 or 70 gallons of syrup. When we first started doing it, I want to say we ended up with a couple 100 gallons of maple syrup. But then it dropped down to like 50, 60. And once it dropped down to 50 or 60, not as many relatives were getting the syrup. Like, they would kind of keep it mainly for their family. I still got it because, you know, like, you know, didn't drop off right away. Like, I kept doing it with them as much as I could because, you know, I was like in Massachusetts. The hour's about 2.5 hours away. So it just kind of ended up being that, you know, they felt like because I was one of the other ones that kept doing it for the longest as much as I could, they felt they wanted to give me a gallon. So I ended up getting a gallon of maple syrup. Well, at the beginning, way back at the beginning, we would get like 2 or 3 gallons of maple syrup. Maybe even, I think we ended up with 5 gallons of maple syrup for just our household. And that would last the whole winter. Back then, I remember we did a lot of, you know, what do you call it? What's the word I want to use? We did a lot of, pancakes and all that, like when I was younger. And so, yeah, so I think I finally, like, I think in 2010 they tried it one more time, the two of them, and I don't even think they got 50 or 60 gallons a lot towards the last end. So it's like we went from getting 2, 3, I think even one year 400 gallons of syrup to probably like 30 or 40 gallons, which, you know, that is a fair amount, and it would only go to certain people, and I would still get it. Like I said, I love maple syrup. You know, more recently, I've been getting maple ice cream from a few different maple sugaring sheds. I'm trying to think. Sorry, I do the thing a lot when I'm talking. You'll notice that. Anyway, I get as much maple ice cream as I possibly can. My mom still goes to some of the local sugar shacks that still sell stuff. There's like 5 or 6 different sugaring shacks throughout the area where my mom is. My uncle's actually tapping like 30 trees, and he's giving her some syrup, but she usually buys the maple syrup at the different local sugaring shacks or sugaring sheds, whatever you want to call them. So she gets a whole gallon. I don't usually get a gallon. I get like a pint or a quart of it because I don't use it as much as, you know, like I don't do a lot of pancakes. I have made things with maple syrup, of course, and then I've also used maple syrup. Oh my god, maple syrup is amazing in coffee. Or like if you do, we have an Nespresso machine, and it is really amazing. So yeah, we do that. My husband and I. which that's great. I do love that. I love that we do that. And it, like, in some ways, getting those, my mom getting the gallon and us getting the quart or the pint, it ends up feeling like, sort of like, you know, it's a way to go down memory lane. I feel like I get to feel like I'm sort of saying, shout out to Grandpa. Like, this is the maple syrup. This is what we used to do. So it's like I have to have one of those, and they're like genuine sugar, you know, maple syrup containers, like the traditional ones. They're brown and they have the label of the company and all that. Like, that is what my grandfather used to do. We used to buy those, and we didn't sell, but we'd buy them, and then once they were emptied, the whole rule of thumb was we would have a funnel and pour the maple syrup back in the container. So we'd keep reusing the containers over the years, but we had those genuine containers, and it was kind of nice. What I was gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh yeah. So anyways, I'm going to visit my grandmother, bringing her donut, spend a little time with her. I think I told you guys the last time when I went up, it was around the time she fell. She didn't break anything, thankfully, but you know, when you're 101 and you fall, it's always usually like this idea that all of a sudden you go downhill, and she's not walking anymore. She has to be taken in a wheelchair to the bathroom. So it is hard to see that, and she's not liking it, and she's kind of given up, which, you know, to all intents and purposes, the fact that she's giving up and she's still, was that the fall was like 2 months ago, and she's still getting up, she's still eating a little bit, still drinking a little bit. I think the inevitable thing is I think it's gonna lead to her getting kidney failure. She's not drinking enough water, not eating enough food. She's drinking, not eating enough food. So it's one of the things that, you know, failure. I hate to see her go that way. I really do. I think that's an awful way to go. But she's responsible for her own body. If she's not drinking or eating, you know, they've told her, like, this is what can happen. And my understanding is when you go into kidney failure and all that, it's not like it's a long, you know, process dying from that, but they say it's painful as that's happening to your body. But if that's the way she goes, that's the way she goes. We've started, like, she's okay with it. We started giving her, she's actually getting, I think it's morphine, but little doses here, goes that, you know, that I will laugh if all of a sudden, we were all wrong and she goes another year. I don't think so, though. I think that's it. But who the heck else has grandparents make it to 101, almost 102? Not too many. So I mean, that's pretty awesome.